Welcome back to the CTO Playbook, the podcast dedicated to helping CTOs excel. Have you ever tried to explain a big architectural decision to your leadership team and just watched their eyes glaze over? Not because they weren't smart, not because they didn't care, but because the words coming out of your mouth may as well have been a NASA pre-launch checklist for all they cared. It's frustrating, right? You're sitting on this technical insight. You can feel the scale challenge approaching. You know it needs addressing now, and yet the people you need to bring along with you just don't see it. In this week's episode, I want to give you a new way to talk about your software stack, one that's helped several of the CTOs I coach, and I think it might help you too. It started with a conversation about data, infrastructure, and a bit of good news. A little while ago, I was coaching a CTO at a growth stage fintech. Charismatic guy, confident speaker. You know, the kind of leader you can imagine on stage at a conference, pulling in applause with a smile and a great slide deck. But in this coaching session, he was frustrated. He'd just come off a call with his co-founders, excited on the surface because they'd just received some fantastic regulatory news. They'd secured accreditation to operate in a much, much larger market. Doors were opening. And with those doors came one thing: pressure. The platform was about to hit a new level of scale. More users, more data, more integrations, more scrutiny. See, it wasn't a nice to have. It was a must prepare moment. So he wanted to carve out the time and resources for his data and his DevOps teams to make some fairly significant architectural changes. And he could see the need as clear as day. But as he told me, and I remember this quite clearly, I'm struggling to get it across why it's so important, why it matters so much now. Not because the other founders disagreed, they just didn't get it. They couldn't see what he could see. He'd tried a few metaphors. You know, it's like rebuilding a plane midair. It's like upgrading the foundations of a building, but none of them stuck. And worse, the building analogy kind of backfired. Because when you build a skyscraper, you pour the foundation first, but you don't dig it up again afterwards. That's not how our system works, he said. Our platform's not fixed. It's evolving. It's almost like a floating city. And that's when I had a light bulb moment. You see, as soon as he said floating city, a picture popped into my head. Not a building, not a plane, but something that I'd worked on with other companies previously. An oil rig. Big, complex, modular, sitting out at sea, floating. Built not on a fixed foundation, but designed to adapt to what's underneath and around it. That's kind of like what modern software platforms are like, don't you think? Our infrastructure isn't sitting on bedrock. It's sitting on a sea of data, of regulation, of third-party systems, of evolving user needs. And we need to drill into it in different ways, depending on what's below. And what does an oil rig do? It doesn't just hold stuff, right? It extracts value. It offloads it. It distributes it. Light oil to one tanker, gas through a different pipe, heavy crude to a different processing system entirely. And suddenly this CTO, he starts nodding. And not just nodding, he starts riffing on the idea. Yeah, we've got different drills for different reservoirs of data, he said. We've got APIs for partners. We've got batch exports. We've got MCPs to build. We've got real-time event streams. It's all being pulled and pushed in different ways. He lit up, and I knew this metaphor had struck home because he immediately started using it, not just with me, but with his team, with his co-founders. The oil rig helped him reframe the complexity, the evolution, and most importantly, the value of the work that his teams were doing. If this is the first episode of the CTO Playbook you've listened to, hi, I'm your host, Adam Horner. And I coach CTOs from startups to enterprises, helping them to lead with clarity, confidence, and strategic impact. If you've ever felt like you're figuring it out the hard way, you're definitely not alone. That's why I created the CTO Playbook, a podcast and platform built for tech leaders just like you. Explore coaching, cohorts, and more at thectoplaybook.com, where you can now sign up to the waitlist for the next cohort of CTO Basecamp, the essential foundation for today's CTOs. Leadership coaching for your path, at your pace, creating your own playbook. Now let's spend a few minutes with this oil rig metaphor, because the more you unpack it, the more useful it becomes, not just as a storytelling device, but as a leadership lens. So here's how I frame it when I talk with other CTOs. See, most traditional architecture metaphors, buildings, planes, even rocket ships, they assume a fixed base, a solid foundation, an unchanging substructure, a defined set of layers, a predictable path. But today's platforms just don't work that way, especially in regulated industries, especially in fintech. The rules shift, the data landscape morphs. And recently, with the advent of AI, it's kind of hit us all. What was once a neat layered cake becomes a complex distributed machine. And oil rigs, they're built for that. So what have we got? We've got the rig itself. And this is the platform, your core logic, the stuff you deploy, evolve, and modularize. You've got the seafloor. That's kind of like your revolving infrastructure. The seafloor changes depending on what market you're in, what scale you're at, what regulatory conditions you're facing. And the drills, that's a data access layer. One drill might reach structured financial data. Another drill might hit event logs, messages, documents, or third-party integrations. We don't use one drill for every job. We swap them out, we adapt, we modify them. And then we've got the offloading mechanism. This is the delivery architecture. Light oil to a mobile app, gas through APIs, heavy crude to internal admin portals or reporting tools. It's composable. It's interconnected. It's adaptive. And most importantly, it's designed to evolve. We're not anchoring this thing into concrete. We're making it float. We're making it flex. And we're making it function across a lifetime of change. And that is something that every CTO needs to explain well. Basically, when the cost of change looks high to people who have never been anywhere near the seafloor. Now, I've used this analogy with a few other CTOs recently, often in fintech, sometimes in GovTech, or these other highly regulated sectors. And it's remarkable how quickly the idea travels and catches on. One CTO, for example, used to explain to their board why they were splitting their analytics into two completely separate storage systems. Think of it a bit like this, he said. We're hitting two different reservoirs with very different compositions. One needs to be streamed in real time, and the other is processed in batches. This isn't about redundancy. It's about specialization, he said. Another CTO used the metaphor to push back rather gently on a CFO's question about, well, why can't we just use one data store across the whole business? They smiled and said, well, you wouldn't offload gas through the same pipe that you use for heavy oil now, would you? And I love that, because once a metaphor sticks, it frees you. It frees you to explain, to educate, and to lead, all without losing the room. This is the power of story. It creates permission. Permission to share complexity in a way that doesn't sound like a threat or a budget request, but more like a strategy. But I want to make something a little clear here. This episode isn't just about the oil rig metaphor, although it's very useful. Yeah, I think it's one of the better ones out there for modern platforms. But the bigger point here, and the thing I want you to walk away with, is this. It's our job as a CTO to translate the value of our platform to the rest of the business, to the rest of the stakeholders. Not just the features, not just the throughput, but the value, the reason for the complexity, the purpose behind the design. And that means telling better stories, not simplifying until the truth disappears in a thin veneer, but reshaping the frame so that others can understand what's at stake. And that's what great leaders do. We're not just architects. We're narrators. We're translators. We're the bridge between a team of engineers and a table of executives trying to steer the business into its next chapter. And sometimes, to be that bridge, we need a new metaphor. So here's your CTO playbook for this week. Number 1, let's audit our metaphors. What analogies are we using today to explain our platform? Are they helping, or are they tripping us up, or worse, landing flat? 2, embrace the oil rig metaphor if it fits. Your stack is floating, modular, and evolving. Treat it and explain it accordingly. Step 3, map your drills to your data needs. See, not all data is equal. Not all systems are accessed the same way. Build and communicate your architecture as a system of interchangeable drills. 4, tailor your offloading to your audience. Don't deliver heavy crude through a drinking straw. APIs, mobile front ends, admin portals, each has its own pipeline. Let's use them intentionally and make them a deliberate part of the platform's agenda. Step 5, let's build metaphors that empower the leadership team. Help your CFO, your CEO, your board to see the why, not just the what. And if you're struggling with this, you're definitely not alone. It's one of the most common challenges I see in coaching. So next time you find yourself in that boardroom trying to explain why the next phase of your platform isn't just a tech initiative, but a strategic necessity, pause. Take a breath. Think about how you're telling the story. You might not be building a skyscraper. You might not be flying a plane. You might be standing on a floating rig, managing complexity at sea. And that's not weakness. That's resilience. That's adaptability. That's strategic leadership in a dynamic world. If this episode helped you reframe how you think about your platform or how you talk about it, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a message on LinkedIn or visit thectoplaybook.com to learn more about coaching and support for tech leaders just like you. Until next time, keep leading with clarity, keep speaking with confidence, and keep building platforms that move with the tide. Thank you for listening to the whole episode. I appreciate your time. So just before you go, I'd like to ask you for a favor in return for putting together this episode of the CTO Playbook for you. Please share the episode with just one person who will appreciate it. Wherever you're listening, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or another platform, sharing the episode will help more CTOs find the podcast and enable me to create more great content. Remember that you can find more information on thectoplaybook.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the CTO Playbook.